Hi guys, and welcome back to the world of 28mm. Sorry it's been a while since I've made a last video. I've had lots of work going on and some commissions and things like that. Those of you who follow my shop, you'll notice that I've now started stocking some Test of Honour stuff. So I've been working on my business and trying to take it a step forward and so on and so forth. So sorry for the shameless plug there, and sorry it's been a while. Secondly, I broke 200 subscribers. That's how long it's been since I've done a video. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all the new subscribers and the previous ones for sticking around and listening to my rubbish. Okay, so what we're going to do in this episode. So this is going to be the beginning of a series. We're going to go through some water features for your board, water bodies, things like that. So I thought I'd start it off with just quite a simple, well no, it won't be simple, no, it'll be quite an in-depth look at what sort of water effects you have to use out there, what they're made of, what can you mix with them, things like that. So we're going to take just what I have here. This isn't every product in the hobby world, there are lots out there, lots of different companies, but I'll show you what I've got here, what I like to use it for, what you can and can't do with it, and then you can make your own decision from there from which one you'd like to have a crack with. Alright, so let's head down to the table and we'll get on with it. Okay, so here we are. To my right I've got a little selection. So I'm going to start off with the good old trusty Woodland Scenics Realistic Water. Now this stuff I quite like it. It's very thin, so when you're pouring it, it can get into all the nooks and crannies quite nicely. It's a liquid acrylic and will take you roughly 24 to 48 hours to dry. That's in ideal conditions. Okay, I live on the coastline, so I find this stuff usually takes 3 to 4 days to dry just because of the humidity, because I'm right about 10 minutes from the beach. But like I say, I really like this stuff. It's very expensive, so I would only use it on small projects. If you're making a small water body like a lake or a pond or whatever, like we did in one of the previous videos. Mixing it. Now you can pretty much mix any sort of stuff into this, to be honest. If you want to colour it, you can use the just normal acrylics like the Citadel or Army Painter acrylic paints, and that will give it a solid colour. Okay, that won't you won't be able to see through it anymore. If you just want to tint it, so you still want to see through it but have a different colour, you can use inks or your Citadel washes. Okay, this is a Army Painter soft tone quick shade, which is essentially an ink. Yeah, and I think that's all there's no actual mixing required apart from giving the bottle a roll. Never ever shake this stuff when you go to use it. You do need to give it a good mix, so I suggest rolling it like that, okay, and turning it over and then doing it the other way. So that's the Woodland Scenics Realistic Water. It's quite expensive. It is good stuff, but for how much you get and how much you pay, there are cheaper alternatives. We'll get to that. So we'll stick to the the watery water effects. And then next up we'll look at Vallejo. So this one is a liquid polyurethane, watered down polyurethane. So essentially when you pour this, obviously the water evaporates, leaving just the polyurethane. It shrinks, it dries, it goes rock solid. And it leaves that nice glossy effect. Same with the Woodland Scenics, it will take roughly 24 to 48 hours to dry. In my, like I say, climate, it will take longer. Mixing wise, you can mix, same as the Woodland Scenics, you can mix acrylics, so it will give you you won't be able to see through it, but it will give you a colour, or you can use your inks just to tint it. It is a little bit more thicker than the Woodland Scenic stuff. It's a little bit more towards a gel side, but it's still self-leveling, that's it. Personal opinion, I hate this stuff. I really dislike it with a pleasure. Does that even make sense? Anyway, I don't like it. Basically, it cracks every time I've poured with it. Now I think, to be honest, I think if I was to sit down and practice with this stuff properly, because I've seen people use it and it looks absolutely amazing, if I sat down and practiced with this, I'd probably get it to work fine. But when I bought this, it was really expensive for how much you get. And I think to master it properly, you'd need 2 or 3 bottles. And like I said, I can't remember exactly how much it was, but you're probably looking at about 30-40 quid for 3 bottles of this. No, actually no, it's a bit far, 25-30. So if it were me, I would avoid this stuff like the plague. I love Vallejo, I've always used their paints, game colours, army colour, things like that. But this is just awful. Okay, so if I was you, veer away from it. If you have used it, and with success, brilliant, fantastic. I haven't, and I haven't got the money in my pocket to keep buying another bottle to experiment further with. Okay, so that's the Vallejo watered down polyurethane. So that's the sort of the watery water effects. So next up we'll look at what I always sort of refer to as the gloopier stuff. Okay, so we'll go back to Woodland Scenics, and this is another one of their water effects there. Okay, and it's just called water effects. Their code is C1212, and this is essentially an acrylic medium. This won't be very good for making like river sections and things like that, like this would, you know. But if you want to add some realism to your water, so if you want some waves, or you want a waterfall, or even just some simple ripples, you know, so it's not completely still water body, then this is good stuff. Okay, there are other alternatives. We'll get to that in a minute, but this is good stuff. There's lots of different things you can do with it. It doesn't take long to dry, well, depending on thickness. If you do it quite thinly, when I use this I tend to do lots of thin layers. Doesn't take that long to dry, about 12, maybe 24 hours if it's like really humid. I use this a lot for making water fountains and waterfalls and just things like that. Like I say, it's for adding the extra realism to your bodies of water. I think that's... oh, you can colour this again, so if you wanted to put just a normal acrylic paints in it. Don't use poster paints, as in like the cheap stuff from like the, you know, I'll get a bottle. This stuff, don't mix this stuff into it, the cheap craft paint that kids use. Okay, that won't mix properly. Just use your army painter or your Vallejo or whatever, or your Citadel. Any of those you can colour this with. You could put some shade in it, but because it's white it won't really have much effect, so you can if you want, but I don't see why. So yeah, you can mix acrylics into it so you can get it to your own colour if you like. If you remember the water fountain, I made it green, so it's kind of like fantasy toxic sort of stuff. So that's the Woodland Scenics. So we'll stick with the acrylic mediums, and we will move on to another Vallejo product. Now I'm hoping the overexposure doesn't get the label. Anyway, so it's a Vallejo, it's called Water Texture Acrylic. Once again, it's an acrylic medium. It's stuck on there, and you can see like it's very similar, to be honest. If I pump some of the Woodland Scenic stuff out, it is exactly the same. They're both liquid acrylics. The drying time will be roughly the same. Be 24 to 48 hours depending on your thickness. It can take longer if you're doing like quite thick bodies. It will take longer. That's not screwed on properly. I'll deal with that in a minute. This was, I got this for £8 a tub, I think. So it's slightly cheaper than this one. I do remember that. I can't remember how much this one was, but it's I do remember this is slightly cheaper. and it is exactly the same thing. You could do whole bodies of water with this, not like lakes, but if you did, sorry, rivers, but if you did lakes or ponds, then you could do it with this. It'd be a bit of an expensive way of doing it, but you could. Like the Vallejo, it's good for adding rapids, or it's good for adding just ripples. You could use it for waterfalls, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so we've also got, to go along with that, is it's the same product still, but all they've done with this one is put a pigment in it. Okay, so this is Vallejo Water Texture Acrylic Atlantic Blue, and they do 3 blues. I don't know about other colours, but I know they do what was it, Atlantic, Pacific and Mediterranean blue. And this is the Atlantic. Now, once again, this can be used like the other acrylic. You know, you could do small bodies of water with it. It would work fine. But personally, I think what I do with this is I'd use it in conjunction with the other 2 blues, the other 2 tones of blues, and then you get a nice sort of, it's not a triad, but you know, you get 3 blues and you could tone them together, you can blend them together and things. So you can add, if you've got this and you only want a little bit of colour, you can just add some pigment to this. Your normal acrylic paints will work fine. Or you could always buy it pre-mixed, and like I said, this is exactly the same, just with a blue pigment in there. You can see how thick and viscous that is. Put that back on there. Okay, so that's all of our not our liquid acrylic, sorry, but our acrylic mediums. So next up, we've got gloss. Now I'm using this spray can. This is a Winsor & Newton gloss varnish spray. I'm using this as a representation, as sort of a gloss in general, gloss varnish. Now I do have a pot of Humbrol gloss varnish, but it's disappeared into the ether of my, well, this house. It will turn up eventually, so this is a rep. Gloss varnish is very good for your water effect. It's a very cheap and very simple way of doing it, because you literally just buy a pot and paint it on. If you're doing loads of river sections, go to a DIY store, buy a small can of it there, and that'll do the whole lot. Okay, so it's a really quick and effective way of doing it because it gives it that shine. Problem is, unlike these ones, these add depth to your terrain. Okay, this just adds shine. So it implies water's there, but it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't look like water. It's just a shiny surface. So it is an option for as a water effect. But as I say, it doesn't quite get the depth that the others do. Okay, so that's about it for gloss. Quite a simple one, really. And we move on to the next. Okay, and lastly, we have our resins. Now, these are my preferred choice, purely because it's easy to work with. It dries 12 to 24 hours rather than the typical 3 to 4 days. And that can be made quicker because it requires a catalyst. But yeah, this is ideal for me. This whole bottle costs £28. It's from a company called CFS. They're quite local to me, so it saves me on postage. I can go and grab it from the actual warehouse. But it was £28 for the entire bottle. And yes, right, you think, well, yeah, that's nearly 30 quid. But that was around 25 quid. So, you know, and you're going to get 5 times more out of this than you are out of this. And you can, with the resin, you can do really deep pours, whereas this is only, what was it, 1/8 of an inch? Yeah, 1/8 of an inch. Where you can go quite deep with this, because this really is for making jewellery and things like that. So, you'll get a bottle of catalyst with it. You mix this in with the resin, it will create a thermic reaction, and which is what causes it to set. You don't have to worry about too much about the ambient humidity in the air, because this relies a lot more on the thermic reaction to cure it than it does surrounding humidity. Though it is a factor, but not as massive as factor as using the woodland scenic stuff. This stuff's a tiny bit harder to colour. If you want to put solid colours into it, now I asked them down at the CFS place and down at the main warehouse, and they said you can only use polyester based tints, colours. Sorry, not tints. So he chucked me a pot of this, which is like a green, basically if you open it up it looks like green paint, but it's a polyester pigment. You can, if you want to tint it, you can use inks. Now here again I've got the, that's the blue tone and that's the soft tone, and you can mix inks in with it and that will work just fine. So yeah, that's my preferred choice for that. A little backup here, I've got one that you saw me use on, what was it, making a fantasy pond. This stuff's great. It smells a little bit, but it dries in like an hour, which is fantastic. But yeah, it's not really, it is a resin, but it's more of a resin glue. You know, it's a bit like No More Nails. But it is, you know, you can use it. It dries clear, hard, glossy. So, you know, it's another option. Okay, so that's everything. I think we've covered everything. So yeah, I will set up for the outro, and I'll see you in a second. And there you go, guys. I hope you found this week's episode helpful. Hopefully this will help you also, you know, make your choice on which water effect to go for, which one's best suited to you, to affordability, usability, that sort of thing. So yeah, oh, any questions at all? I've tried to remember and explain everything I could about this. If I've missed anything, or you want to put any ideas out or ask me any questions, leave them in the comments below, or chuck me an email at world28mm@gmail.com. Okay, alright, so yeah, that's it for this week's episode. Like it if you liked it, share if you think anyone else would like to see it, and don't forget to subscribe for next week's episode. Have fun, guys. Oh, it will be next week as well, not 3 months' time.